The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for spending your lunchtime hour with us today. My name is Elise Shadler, and I work for the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program, which is a collaborative program of the Vermont Department of Forests, Parks, and Recreation and the University of Vermont Extension. To find more about our program, visit our website at vtcommunityforestry.org. Today's webinar presentation is titled the Vermont Village Greens Initiative, and we have three presenters this afternoon. They are Richard Amore, Kate O'Brien, and Amie Schiller. As each presenter begins his or her segment, I will formally introduce them. But before we get started, I'd like to go over just a few logistics. As participants of the webinar, your microphones will be muted during the entire presentation. If you do have questions as they arise, please feel free to use the questions or the chat box option on your side panel to type in your questions. At the end of the presentation, I will present the questions to the presenters in the order in which they came in. At the end of the presentation, you will be asked to follow a link to a very short evaluation survey. Please fill this out so that we can continue to improve and guide our future webinars and programming. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on the archived webinars page on our website. Again, that's www.vtcommunityforestry.org. It'll be available as a YouTube video by the beginning of next week. With that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our first presenter for the webinar, Richard Amore. Richard is a community planner and urban designer working for the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Richard serves as the planning coordinator for the Division of Community Planning and Revitalization, and he manages the Village Center Designation Program. He provides Vermont villages with technical assistance and dedicated funding to spur economic investment in community revitalization. Richard is an AICP certified planner, a full member of the American Society of Landscape Architects, an NCI certified charrette planner, and he sits on the executive board of the Vermont chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects and the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Council. Richard holds a BS in Environmental Design, a Master of Landscape Architecture, and Master of Community Planning from Auburn University. So with that, Richard, please take us away.
Thank you, Elise. So hi, I'm Richard Amore. I'm from the Department of Housing and Community Development, and today I'm happy to present the Vermont Village Green Initiative to you all. Steeped in history and tradition, Village Greens have served as the physical and cultural heart of Vermont communities for centuries. They were sites of original settlements. They were historically located where roads converge, like here in Barre, where meeting houses were established, and commerce concentrated. From our country stores to our urban centers, and where homes are clustered in Pittsford and in Waterbury. Village Greens are the heart of our communities. Often surrounded by important civic, economic, and religious buildings, Village Greens have always been a place to gather and observe tradition and celebrate holidays. They are a unique piece of Vermont life, one that provides us with a lasting sense of time and place, and they are integral to the Vermont way of life. Greens provide open spaces around which community life has developed. The civic, spiritual, and economic life of the community is often represented in the buildings around the green. From our churches and meeting houses to our schools, Village Greens mark our history and heritage and serve as cultural reminders of our past, and even provide an environmental value as well, with trees offering shade and collecting stormwater to improve our water quality, more important now than ever. To displaying a show of fall color, and offering a place for music to flourish on the old bandstand in Rochester and Swanton. They provide a larger community of gathering spaces, from watching the World Cup in Burlington to celebrating with a local band in Waterbury or catching a lunchtime concert series in Burlington. Village Greens are the setting for community life. But oftentimes greens provide the setting for annual traditions, such as the community fair in Townsend or Danville's Community Fair, which has been going on for decades, right on the green, to annual holiday celebrations like the Easter egg hunt in Swanton, to weekly farmers markets in Craftsbury or South Royalton and Swanton, or just a place to take a leisurely stroll, such as in Woodstock, or even a place to catch a nap on a bench in Chester, or to enjoy the view in Craftsbury, or let the kids play in St. Albans, or just read the paper on a sunny day. Greens provide the setting for about anything to happen in everyday life, even a place to teach our children about caring for the landscape, and they become the names of our streets in Pittsford, and even our general store in New Haven. Village Greens are the heart and soul of Vermont communities. Greens not only preserve a legacy of architecture and town planning, but they also are cultural institutions unto themselves, and they ensure ritual, from high school graduations and farmers markets, community festivals to band concerts. They are essential to Vermont character and the way of life. Vermont is proud to claim more than 140 greens or commons across the state. They are icons of history, tradition, and they are integral to the Vermont brand. Village Greens anchor and strengthen our communities and make our cities and towns more attractive places to live and work. The Vermont Village Green Initiative is reviving awareness about Vermont's Village Greens and the important cultural and economic role they play to our state. The initiative is a collaborative effort between the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program, the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development, the Preservation Trust of Vermont, and the University of Vermont's Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources. The Vermont Village Green Initiative began in the fall of 2013, and to date, Village Greens have been explored through service learning projects in 5 courses at UVM, engaging over 60 undergraduate students and focusing on 18 village greens, looking at natural resource courses, to landscape design, and cultural geography, and community engagement. This initiative is engaging students on our greens. To more focused studies, like a summer internship through the Agency of Commerce and in collaboration with the Preservation Trust of Vermont, focusing on developing case studies and maps and identifying all the greens statewide. To a year-long internship with the Urban and Community Forestry Program, focusing on developing a comprehensive report on Vermont Village Greens. We also identified the location of Vermont's Village Greens on the Agency of Natural Resource Atlas, an online mapping tool. That data is still evolving, and we hopefully have identified most, if not all of them, but if we miss one, please let us know. We also developed aerial photographs and maps of each of the greens across the state. Village Greens and Town Commons are Vermont's community gathering space. They provide residents and visitors a place to gather, exercise, recreate, celebrate, and engage in commerce and community.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Richard. We're going to switch over to Kate O'Brien now. So here's Kate's bio. Kate is a recent graduate from Norwich University with a Bachelor's of Science in Architectural Studies. She's continuing her education at the Conway School of Landscape Design, where she will obtain a Master's in Ecological Design. Previously, Kate ran her own landscape business and interned at Duo Dickinson Architecture Firm. Last summer, O'Brien was given the opportunity to work with the state of Vermont researching village greens across the state for the Vermont Village Greens Initiative, and she'll be telling you about that right now. And Kate desires to use her education to pursue a career in urban planning with a focus on environmental design. Kate, go ahead.
Thank you, Elise, and thank you everyone for joining this afternoon. As Elise mentioned, I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with the state of Vermont on the Vermont's Village Green Initiative. This strives to celebrate Vermont's numerous greens through researching, identifying, documenting, and observing these spaces, and also to promote their cultural and economic and environmental benefits. Greens are often the heart of a town. It's a place where locals and visitors alike gather. The initiative reveals the greens' unique stories and promotes exposure. I would like to thank partners who have funded and supported this effort, which includes the Preservation Trust of Vermont, Vermont Downtown Program, the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program, and the UVM Community-Based Learning Program. This slide outlines the work that I accomplished during my summer internship. The first portion was identifying the greens across the state, which is recorded in an Excel spreadsheet, and also each of these have individual maps. Then developing 25 village green site maps for specific towns, case studies, and field research and documentation of 7 village greens, and also putting all of this information, the PDFs, on the website, and finally the final report, which was organizing my data and presenting. As mentioned, I spent a lot of time on Google Maps and Bing, zooming into Vermont, specific towns like Woodstock, and finding greens as this one. In total, I just recorded 148 greens, and this was after comparing my data with previous research, which was fantastic. On the left, this shows all of the greens per county. I had the opportunity to go out in the fields, which was great, and a lot of sunny, beautiful days. So here, this shows the Woodstock's green, as well as Stratford. And here from Chelsea's Farmers Market in the upper right-hand corner to the panorama of Northfield's streetscape, it really shows how towns care about their greens. So one of the 7 greens that I visited was Craftsbury. Here, this shows some images. So the white fence denotes the green's recreational function and offers a nice contrast to the vibrant colors on such a sunny day. While the green is remote, its proximity to Sterling College, Craftsbury Public School, a church, library, post office, art store, and museum provide plenty of activity. And I must say, although I'm very competitive in nature, I would not mind sitting on that bench in the center with great views of the vast green. Some events on this green include the Farmers Market, Antiques and Uniques, Old Home Day, and recreational camps. I created, using Vermont Agency Natural Resources, maps were created, which were used as a template for illustrated site maps. These maps highlight the buildings around the green with numbers and the function on the side underneath the legend. In the upper right-hand corner, a little red dot denotes where the town is in relation to the state. The panorama at the top gives a more visual of the space, and then pictures at the bottom show more views of the green. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's events on the green, so notes maybe when there's a farmer's market or other events happening. For the 7 greens that I went out into the fields, there's also case studies, and these are like one-pagers with information, including a photograph, narrative, factual information about the town, and an overview of the initiative itself as well as the partners involved. As I mentioned earlier, all of this information, the PDFs and the Excel files, are available online through the state's website. Lastly, I would like to thank everyone. A special thanks to Paul Baroon and the Preservation Trust of Vermont, who funded my internship, Richard Amore, for coordinating and organizing the experience, the community and planning crew, and everyone at the state who graciously welcomed me. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Kate. And now we're going to switch over to the second intern that's been involved in this project, Amie Schiller. Amie is currently a senior studying wildlife and fisheries biology and geospatial technology at the University of Vermont. She served as a Vermont Village Green Initiative intern from September of 2013, right when we were getting started, through September of 2014, and was recognized as the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Council's 2014 Youth Student Vermont Tree Steward because of her work on the project. Amie is returning to work on this project this year as her senior capstone project at UVM, and she believes that this is the perfect opportunity to bring her academic and experiential learning experiences of undergrad full circle. Amie, take it away.
All right there. Hi guys, my name is Amie. I was served as the Vermont Village Greens Initiative for about a year in 2013. And then I decided to take on more of an outreach component on the initiative for my senior capstone, as Elise mentioned. So before we begin, I'd like to thank 9 of the original Vermont Village Greens towns that I decided to create my comprehensive report on. And that was Bristol, Middlebury, New Haven, Burlington, Jericho Center, Shelburne, Barre, and Waterbury. All right, so the statistics of the part of the project that I've been working on is that it's been about 1.5 years since it was founded. We've studied about 17 towns to date and involved about 60 students in gathering research and working on some part of compiling the report. And as Richard mentioned earlier, we also have involvement with 4 or 5 experiential learning classes at the University of Vermont and beyond. But my work specifically correlated with the landscape design fundamental class, the environmental impact assessment class, the intermediate environmental studies class, and the sustainable landscape architecture class at the University of Vermont. So I decided to kind of break my project as an intern with the Vermont Village Greens Initiative into 2 phases. And my first phase was really focused on creating this 67-page comprehensive report of the 9 original study towns that I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation. So for each town, we tried to create landscape design maps, develop an ethnographic survey, and go out to people who are using the village green in Barrie and ask them how they're using the green and how often they're using the green. And I also got to visit all of the 9 greens and take photographs of surrounding infrastructure, just to document kind of what the location is like. I also spent a lot of time in the Bailey Howell Library at the University of Vermont researching history behind how the towns were developed within Vermont and how the village greens came to rise in that town specifically. I also worked a lot with students in the environmental impact assessment class to go out and survey the trees on all of our study greens, which I'll talk about a little later. And we also worked with a bunch of students to develop a set of landscape design recommendations that may be used by towns in the future to influence any management that might happen into the future. This photo right here is an example of an opportunities and constraints map, which was done by a few students at the University of Vermont. This is of Burlington's City Hall Park, and they were making a map of areas where there's shade in the park and areas where there's sun in the park, and suggesting the scheme of garden seating and formal seating, as well as an information booth close to City Hall, which I thought was pretty cool. And we tried to get these for each of the original 9 study towns. This is the front page of my report, which can also be found on the Vermont Urban Community Forestry Program's website. These are some examples of my site photography that I got to do when I was out and about. Starting from the top left, moving clockwise, I have Middlebury's Village Green, Waterbury, Bristol, I think another Bristol, Middlebury, and then in the bottom left-hand corner is Jericho Center. Another part of my first phase of my project included coordinating students to go out to my 9 study greens and document all of the trees that were on the green. So they went out and they took GPS points of each tree and they documented condition, power line conflict, and a couple of other measurement variables that told us a bit of information about each tree. And they created these Google KML maps, which I have links to in my report, where you can go onto Google Maps and you can click on each tree and you can see how big the tree is at diameter at breast height, You can tell its species. You can see whether or not there may be a potential power line conflict with that tree, which is really cool and might have some management implications into the future. So this part of my project also involves collecting data from those trees on the greens and using this free software program from the U.S. Forest Service called ITree to use mathematical models to create a bit of a picture of the environmental services that the trees are giving to kind of the green area. So for this part of the project, we use the iTree's Street Suite to create an inventory of the trees, and then, as I mentioned before, we conducted analysis using that software program. So this is an example of output that you might get from iTree analysis. This is actually for Barry's Village Green, and you can see that these percentages here are in economic equivalents of the benefits of the trees to people. So here you can see aesthetic value of the trees on the green is 42%, energy is 41%, stormwater is 9%, air quality is 7%, and CO2 sequestration is roughly 1%. Here's a more in-depth example of kind of taking that energy wedge of the pie from the last graph and going to it more in detail. So this is an example from Middlebury's Village Park. It's stormwater benefits that occur from all trees that are present on the green by species. So here, as you can see, the Norway maples and the sugar maples are responsible for the most rainfall inception in gallons for the entire green, which is actually pretty spectacular. You can see that's a direct service that the trees are providing to the landscape, which is pretty cool. Now, coming into my senior year at the University of Vermont, I decided my second phase of the project was to go out and try and reach out to all of the original 9 towns and show them some of the research that was done, whether it be the ITree data or landscape design maps or the overview that I wrote about the historical background of the town. I also wanted to raise public awareness of the Village Greens through this webinar and provide a fact sheet, which Richard talked a little bit about earlier, that involves resources for town managers and conservation boards and contacts to Richard and Elise Schiller at the Vermont Urban Community Forestry Program, who are really going to bring this project forward. All right, thank you.
Okay, and so now we'll go back to Richard, who's going to give a little bit more context about how this information will be used by communities and how we envision the future of the project progressing. So go ahead, Richard.
Okay, good deal. Now I want to talk about village greens and making things happen on greens. Throughout Vermont, budgets are tight, and some of Vermont's village greens suffer from deferred maintenance, poor preservation, or just lack of general investment. And now I want to talk about some ways to make investment possible and showcase a few communities who have successfully revitalized their green. But first, kind of got to step back and really understand how to make revitalization happen, and that is to develop a vision, and the vision must be community-driven. And you've got to have a plan behind that vision, because a vision without a plan is just hallucination, just like Thomas Edison said. So next, you develop a plan and identify revitalization strategies to improve your green. Those strategies could include physical improvements, maintenance and operation strategies, funding, and some event programming. But a plan is no good if you don't have any money. So you got to find some money to make that plan reality. So it's looking at identifying and securing funding to implement that vision and develop your plan. And those strategies could include local fundraising, crowdsourcing, using local town funds, state grants, federal grants, as well as nonprofit and foundation grants. And revitalization happens incrementally. Don't search for a silver bullet. Think silver buckshot. Look at ways to improve your streetscapes and public infrastructure, your sidewalks, your benches, your lighting, your trees, but also the historical buildings that surround the green and connect the rest of the green to the downtown and village, as well as the structures within it, the fountains, the monuments, the statues. And make sure your public policies and your plans and bylaws are in place to make sure the integrity of the green carries on moving forward, as well as developing partnerships and raising community support. First, looking at ways to make streetscape and public infrastructure happen, you need to explore ways to improve the surrounding streetscape, looking at sidewalks, trees, benches, your bandstand, the physical environment by tapping into some of these state agency grant programs, and finding ways to improve the surrounding buildings and historic structures by using state grant programs like the Downtown and Village Center Tax Credit, the Community Development Block Grants, our Historic Preservation Grants, as well as the Certified Local Government Grants. Barry did a fabulous job doing this over the years where they improved their streetscape as well as their Barry City Hall Park using transportation enhancement funds to revitalize their green, reconstruct their bandstand, as well as develop an amazing streetscape project that has really transformed their downtown. And you really need to find money and secure money to develop those policies and that vision and that plan to really keep your green going strong. And at the state, we offer many grant programs to help you make sure your policies are in place to keep your village and your downtown and your green going in the future. And some of those are Agency of Commerce municipal planning grants, as well as the CDBG grants, Community Development Block Grants, and VTrans offers quite a bit of bike planning programs focused on bike and pedestrian planning. And the key to implementation effort is partnerships. Developing partnerships with local, regional, and state entities is crucial in moving forward, but also just small things locally can be done to improve your green, like in Craftsbury, where the community members get together and they have a common fence painting day. Or in St. Albans, where annually local volunteers tend to the green. Now I would like to kind of briefly highlight 3 success stories. Bristol has been focusing on revitalizing its green for several years, from restoring its fountain to building a new natural playground to improving its sidewalks, lighting, and adding benches. They found money the grassroots way. The total playground project was over $90 grand, and Bristol raised over $60,000 through grants, but $30,000 came through local fundraising. Bristol received grants from the nonprofit Kaboom, the Vermont Community Foundation, along with a facilities grant from the state of Vermont's Parks and Recreation to design and build their playground, which led directly to implementation and then community celebration and ribbon cuttings. Today's Bristol's Green is a community asset shared and enjoyed by all. And most recently, Bristol was awarded an Agency of Commerce grant, the Downtown Transportation Fund grant, to create a safer and inviting pathway to downtown. I'd just like to highlight that if you guys are interested in what Bristol's doing and will continue to do, contact Darla Senecal with the town of Bristol. She's the head of the Recreation Department, and she would be happy to talk further with you about Bristol, or just head over to Bristol and make sure you bring the kids and check out the new playground. I want to mention a larger scale effort that took a lot more years and I think a lot more money, federal dollars, as a matter of fact, in Danville. From 1999 to 2014, the Vermont Arts Council partnered with VTrans and the town of Danville to develop a collaboration between artists, community members, and engineers in the redevelopment of a section of U.S. Highway Route 2 that runs through the center of Danville, and they completely revitalized its green. The project included removal of a road that bisected the green, creation of 19 sculptures, new gateway signs, reconstruction of the bandstand, improved parking and traffic pattern, including traffic calming features, new lighting, new planting and trees, stone walls, an amphitheater, and so much more. The Vermont Arts Council plans to have updated information about the Danville project on their website soon, with a forthcoming documentary showcasing the project. For more information about the Danville project, contact Michelle Bailey with the Vermont Arts Council, or head over to Danville for a day trip. Lastly, I want to highlight the City of St. Albans. They have been in the news quite a bit lately for its successful completed downtown revitalization project. It took a lot of hard work, time, and commitment. And it all started with a vision of what they wanted for their downtown. But it didn't simply sit on a shelf. The final master plan became an actively used blueprint for moving the town forward with specific projects. So they began investing in their streetscape improvements, which in turn spurred building owners to upgrade facades and storefronts. And it all started back in 2009 with a master plan they got that was funded by an Agency of Commerce municipal planning grant to really develop that vision and move the town forward. 3 years later and $3 million, the downtown streetscape in St. Albans has been tremendous effort. And the way St. Albans did it, they pieced together funding from state, federal, and local sources to make the revitalization happen. And here you can see the amount of funding they received from various agencies at the state as well as from the feds. And then you see $600 grand of local TIF money and bonds to make the revitalization streetscape project happen that was directly on their downtown, but also their Taylor Park, their Village Green. And most recently, St. Albans was awarded an Agency of Commerce grant for historic preservation to restore its historic fountain in the center of Taylor Park. And then for more information, I would reach out to Chip Sawyer, Director of Planning and Development in St. Albans, or head over to St. Albans this weekend and visit the annual Maple Festival that's happening on St. Albans Green, Taylor Park. Lastly, I highlighted a lot of these earlier, but I just wanted to mention that it's about finding ways to make revitalization happen. We do offer a lot of grant programs and monies to make revitalization happen in your downtown and village, and we put together a list most recently where you can find these funding opportunities that directly relate to improvements on your village green. And I won't read that off, but it's of course a very long government URL, but please take note that this presentation will be recorded, and we will actually have a PDF of this presentation on our website, or if you're a quick writer, write it down now. And all this information, as well as that funding list that you just saw, is on the Agency of Commerce website. We do have a specific website for Village Greens with that funding directory and other information, as well as Amie and Kate's great work, as well as the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program. They do have a page on the Vermont Village Green Initiative as well. And I also want to give a plug for an upcoming the Downtown and Historic Preservation Conference that is happening on Friday, June 5th. If you want to learn more about great things happening in Vermont's downtowns and village centers, come join us in Burlington on Friday, June 5th. And lastly, I want to give special thanks. The Village Green Initiative would not be possible without the following partners: the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program, specifically Elise Schiller and Danielle Fitzko, the Preservation Trust of Vermont, Paul Bruin specifically, UVM Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources, the many students and professors who have been part of this initiative, as well as the team that I'm a part of, the Department of Housing and Community Development, specifically the Division of Community Planning and Revitalization, my great colleagues, and the folks in Historic Preservation. And then lastly, our two great interns over the past year, Kate OBrien, who was graduate of Norwich and now at the Conway School of Landscape Design, and Amie Schiller, who is graduating from UVM this May. Congrats, Amie. The Village Green Initiative will continue to document, showcase, and revitalize these beloved public spaces to assure that future generations enjoy the economic, cultural, and social benefits Village Greens provide Vermonters and our visitors. Thank you for your time today. Please contact me if you have any success stories to share about Village Greens or seek to revitalize your green. I think at this time, Elise will facilitate questions.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat box on the right-hand panel. Amie and Kate, I did want to ask you guys to perhaps share your experience. You guys both got to get out onto the greens and meet people who are using the greens and take some great pictures and see events that are happening across the state. So I'd be interested from your student perspective what any lessons learned or favorite fun facts about Vermont's Village Greens have been in that process for you.
Well, I can speak from a little bit of my experience about my favorite village green so far specifically. I remember doing my kind of previous research, trying to figure out a bunch of historical landmarks and that sort of thing in Middlebury's Village Green specifically, and reading some sort of text that talked about a specific post within the green that's can be seen kind of in front of the church, and it has a large P on it. And apparently that was where the first sheriff of the town put his stocks. And I thought that was a really great connection to history, and when I went out there I made sure I saw it and documented it. Overall, it's been a great experience for me. I've had a great time getting to meet with a bunch of town managers to kind of talk to all of you about what work has been done already, maybe how you can use it going into the future, and you know, like how we can keep the momentum of awareness on village greens going. I think is really important as well.
Yes, I definitely enjoyed my experience as well. Getting out in the field was great. It was really cool to see the different shapes of the greens and the connections to the surrounding buildings. I remember in particular Chelsea, well, for one, being the only town that has two greens actually, and being there during one of the farmers markets, and the public library had a little group of children reading books at the green, and I thought how nice it was to be able to bring the students or the children outside and use the green during this, you know, festival, and to see how there's an interaction with the surrounding. I also enjoyed the artwork on some of the greens, like Danville, the sculptures, so it was cool to see this integration of how the people use it and the different pieces they have on the green, like the pavilions. Yeah, but seeing them being used was very fun for me.
Okay, thanks, guys. Richard, I have a question from you, and also a comment in general that we recognize that some of the slides were not up there very long, and they will all be posted on our website, and mostly they were just pictures that we wanted to show off some of the great pictures that were taken by Amie and Kate last year. But Richard, the question for you is, if you wanted to start something like this on your green from scratch, where do you begin?
Oh, what does this mean and what are you trying to do is the first question. I think identifying what you're trying to do, and I was talking about developing that vision and having a plan about how to move forward, and then knowing what steps you need to take and what funding sources you need to make happen to make that plan reality.
Great. Well, that's. Oh wait, there's another question. So this is more of a comment. It says, "Great work, everyone. This gives me inspiration to focus on a village green project for Heinsberg, my town. Thanks to you all."
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Okay, we're gonna. Looks like we're gonna probably wrap up a little bit early today, but want to again thank our panelists today, Richard and Amie and Kate, for giving us some of their time to talk about this wonderful project they've been working on, and remind you all that the full presentation will be available as both a PowerPoint and as a YouTube video on our website, vtcommunityforestry.org. And to remind you that next month our webinar will be happening on Thursday, March 21st from 12 to 1, and it will be Emerald Ash Borer Planning Lessons from the Midwest. And our presenter will be Mark Duntman, who is based out of the Chicago area and runs an urban forestry consulting business. And he's presented for us before and will be presenting again in May. So thanks again, everyone. And if you have any further questions for either Richard or I about the Village Greens Initiative, please feel free to give us an email. And actually, there is one more question that came in, Richard, what you might be able to answer. Let's see. Do any of the village greens in Vermont feature edible landscaping or community gardens?
I'm sure they do. I don't know off the top of my head that any that do. but I'm sure there's some greens across the state that do. And if anybody on the call knows of one, I don't know if you can chime in, but let us know. I think that's a valuable effort that should be mentioned.
Or maybe a valuable project that needs to be started.
Exactly.
Great. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of the month, and hopefully we'll see you in May.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.